Hey everyone, welcome back to Bloomcraft. This is your go-to channel for all things gardening, plant care, and turning your home or outdoor spaces into those lush, green havens that make you smile every time you look at them. I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're a newbie with a couple of pots on your windowsill or a seasoned green thumb with a backyard full of wonders. Today, I've got something super exciting to share. A simple trick that's going to blow your mind. It's all about taking those dry, crunchy leaves, piling up in your yard, and turning them into living compost in just a few days. Yeah, you heard that right. Pour this on them and watch the magic happen. Jick. Let's dive in because I promise this is easier than you think, and it'll change how you handle fall cleanup forever. Picture this. It's that time of year when the trees drop their leaves like confetti after a party, and suddenly your lawn looks like a colorful carpet that's more mess than magic. I remember my first fall in my little suburban yard a few years back. The wind was swirling, and leaves from the big old oak out front were everywhere, sticking to the walkways and burying my flower beds. I stood there with a rake in hand, wondering if I'd ever get through it all. What do you do with them? Bag them up and toss them to the curb? Nah, that's just wasting pure potential. Leaves are nature's recyclers. They're packed with nutrients like potassium and magnesium that your soil is absolutely begging for to stay healthy and vibrant. But dry leaves by themselves, they're stubborn as anything. They sit there in a big heap, breaking down at a snail's pace, sometimes taking months or even a full year if you just leave them to their own devices. That's where this game-changing hack comes in. We're going to speed things up with something you probably have right in your kitchen pantry or garage shelf. Ready for the reveal? The secret ingredient is water mixed with a bit of molasses or sugar. Yep, plain old sweet stuff diluted in water. It's like giving those leaves a gentle nudge, a wake-up call to start teeming with life and activity right away. Let me back up a bit and explain why this works so well, because getting the why behind it makes the whole process click and keeps you motivated when you're out there getting your hands dirty. Dry leaves are mostly made up of carbon. Think of it as the fluffy, bulky part that gives structure to your compost pile, like the frame of a house. But to really get things moving, they need a good dose of nitrogen for balance, and plenty of moisture to wake up the microbes. Those microbes are the unsung heroes of the soil world, tiny bacteria, fungi, and other decomposers that chew through the tough plant material and turn it into that rich, dark, nutrient-packed stuff we all crave. Without enough wetness and a little energy source, they just hang out dormant like guests at a party with no snacks. So, when you pour on that molasses water, you're not just hydrating the pile, you're essentially rolling out the red carpet and serving up a buffet for those good microbes. The sugars in the molasses give them quick energy to multiply and get to work breaking down the leaves. In just a few days, you'll start seeing real signs of life, steam rising from the pile on those milder autumn days. That's the heat generated from all the microbial hustle. And the leaves will begin softening around the edges, shrinking in volume, and giving off that fresh, earthy smell instead of the dry, musty odor they had before. I tried this method last autumn with a massive pile from my maple tree, which always drops thousands of those helicopter seeds and leaves. By day 4, it was already transforming. Little earthworms were wiggling in, and chunks of leaves were turning into a soft, muddy texture. No fancy composting tumblers or expensive additives needed. Just a simple bucket, some stirring, and a whole lot of patience rewarded quickly. Okay, let's roll up our sleeves and get into the practical steps, because I know you're itching to try this out in your own space. First things first, start by gathering your leaves without too much stress on your back. Rake them up gently from your yard or nearby paths. Mix of types is best, like oak for toughness or maple for quicker breakdown, but whatever you've got works. Aim for a dedicated spot that's somewhat sheltered, maybe a 3 foot by 3 foot pile to keep it manageable for beginners. If you're tight on yard space, like many of us city folks, a store-bought compost bin or even a repurposed plastic trash can with some drainage holes poked in the bottom can be your best friend. It keeps things contained and neat. I know a friend named Daisy. She's this energetic mom with a tiny balcony garden in a bustling apartment building downtown. She doesn't have a yard, but she started collecting fallen leaves from the local park during her walks. Always double check your area's rules on that to stay eco-legal, stuffing them into a few heavy-duty grocery bags. With this method, she turned them into compost that now nourishes her collection of potted veggies and flowers, making her little outdoor nook feel like a secret garden oasis. Now, onto the star of the show, the pour itself. Head to your kitchen and mix up about a gallon of lukewarm water with a full cup of molasses. Blackstrap molasses is fantastic if you can find it at the store because it's nutrient dense, but regular baking molasses or even brown sugar dissolved in will do the trick just fine. If you're out of those, a splash of diluted fruit juice from your fridge can step in as a natural alternative. Something like apple juice works without overpowering. Stir it all until it fully dissolves, creating this sweet, syrupy solution that's easy to handle. Then, slowly drizzle it over your leaf pile, working from the top down so it soaks in evenly. You want the whole mass to feel damp to the touch, like a well-wrung-out sponge, moist enough to encourage activity, but not so soggy that it turns into a sloshy mess, which could lead to bad smells from lack of air. If your leaves are bone dry from a long summer, build the pile in layers for better results. Add about a foot of leaves, then lightly sprinkle some of the molasses mix over it, followed by another foot of leaves, and repeat until you're done. For an extra boost, top the entire pile with a thin layer of garden soil or a handful of finished compost from a previous batch if you have it handy. That introduces even more of those helpful microbes right from the start. Every couple of days, grab a pitchfork or garden fork and give the pile a good turn, fluffing it up to let fresh oxygen circulate. Think of it as aerating because without air, the process can go sour and produce that unpleasant rotten egg funk from anaerobic bacteria taking over. Here's where the real excitement builds, and you get to witness the transformation firsthand. It's like watching a time-lapse video in your own backyard. On day one, it might not look like much, just a pile of wet leaves glistening a bit in the sun. But come day 2 or 3, especially if the weather cooperates with temperatures above 50 degrees, you'll notice the pile starting to warm up noticeably to the touch. I once set up a little experiment with my neighbor, Oliver. He's this retired teacher in his late 60s who's turned his hobby into a full-blown backyard science lab. We made 2 identical piles side by side from the same batch of mixed leaves. One got the full molasses water treatment, the other just plain water. By the morning of day 3, the treated pile was actually steaming in the cool air, and when Oliver poked around, he found the leaves already starting to clump together and break apart more easily. He laughed and said it took him right back to his grandma's old farm in the countryside, where she'd use similar sweet soaks on crop waste to get the soil alive faster during harvest season. Those microbes are working overtime now, munching through the carbon structure and converting it into humus, that stable, nutrient-rich material that feeds your plants for months. In about a week, you'll have something that's soft, crumbly, and partially broken down. Not quite the fully cured compost that takes a couple of months, but definitely alive, active, and ready to incorporate into your garden beds or pots to kickstart growth. Speaking of useful tweaks along the way, let's chat about troubleshooting, because no garden project goes perfectly smooth every time, and knowing how to adapt keeps things fun instead of frustrating. If your pile seems to stay cold and lifeless after a couple of days, it might be too dry in that spot. Circle back with another gentle pour of the molasses mix to rehydrate without drowning it. On the flip side, if it's too wet and starting to compact, toss in some extra dry leaves or even a bit of straw or shredded newspaper to soak up the excess and restore balance. Worried about uninvited guests like raccoons or squirrels sniffing around? A simple ring of chicken wire or hardware cloth around the base of the pile can deter them while still allowing the worms and beneficial insects to do their thing undisturbed. And don't forget, temperature plays a huge role in the speed. In cooler fall snaps, the process might stretch to 5 or 6 days instead of 3, but that's totally normal. Just keep turning it to maintain some internal warmth. I learned this lesson the hard way with my rose bushes last spring. After treating a fresh leaf pile just like we're talking about, I worked the early stage compost into the soil around my favorite climbing rose, which I've named Rose for her pink petals. She was looking a little droopy from the winter, but within weeks she perked up dramatically, sending out longer canes and blooming with flowers that were fuller and brighter than anything I'd seen in previous years. It's all thanks to those unlocked nutrients. Nitrogen to push new growth, phosphorus to strengthen roots, and trace elements that make the colors pop, all pulled straight from what used to be a nuisance pile of yard debris. Now, let's dream a little bigger and imagine scaling this up for folks with more room to play. If you've got a generous yard or a dedicated garden area, consider turning it into a layered system for even richer results. Start with your dry leaves as the carbon-rich base, then alternate with green materials like fresh grass clippings, veggie peels from the kitchen, or even coffee filters for that nitrogen punch. Douse each layer lightly with the molasses water to bind it all together and keep the microbes happy across the board. It's like assembling a delicious lasagna right in your compost bin, each layer adding flavor and depth to the final product. My buddy Lucas, who's got this thriving community garden plot on the edge of town, absolutely swears by this approach. He pours the sweet mix on his piles about once a week during peak leaf season, and the resulting compost is so potent and dark that other gardeners line up at their monthly swaps just to get a bucketful. Over coffee one crisp morning, he shared how it completely rescued his row of tomato plants that were starting to wilt from nutrient-poor soil. He'd begun with a stubborn batch of dry oak leaves. Those are notoriously slow to decompose because of their high tannin content. But after the treatment, they softened up fast, and his tomatoes ended up heavy with fruit that lasted well into the fall. Stories like Lucas's show how this isn't just a quick fix, it's a foundation for a whole season of abundance. But hey, this magic isn't reserved for those with sprawling outdoors. Let's talk about these small-scale wonders that fit right into everyday life, especially if you're juggling a busy schedule or limited space. If you're anything like my sister Ivy, who's passionate about her indoor jungle but lives in a cozy apartment, you can pull this off in something as simple as a 5-gallon bucket on your patio or even inside a garage corner. Just collect a modest amount of leaves from neighborhood trees during your daily strolls, layer them in the bucket, dampen with the molasses solution, and give it a stir each day with a stick or trowel. In a few short days, you'll have a usable batch to top dress your houseplants or mix into larger pots. Ivy gave it a go for her towering fiddle leaf fig that was struggling with dusty soil, and after incorporating the fresh compost, it put on 2 feet of new growth in just a month, its leaves glossy and strong. No harsh chemicals or pricey potting mixes required, just pure natural enhancement. And the cherry on top? This whole process is completely free, incredibly eco-friendly, and helps slash the amount of organic waste heading to overflowing landfills. Every single pile you transform means one less bag of leaves contributing to methane emissions, and that's a win for the planet that feels personal and powerful. As we keep building on this, think about the ripple effects it can have across your entire green space. It's not just about the compost, it's about fostering a living system that supports everything you grow. That finished product isn't mere dirt, it's buzzing with earthworms, beneficial bacteria, and fungi that form partnerships with your plant roots, delivering nutrients exactly where they're needed in a slow-release way. Pouring that molasses kickstart essentially launches a mini ecosystem right in your backyard, one that mimics what's happening in healthy forests all over the world. I saw the proof in my own veggie patch after treating a leaf pile this way. I mixed the early compost around my raised beds, and suddenly my carrots came up sweeter and more uniform, while the lettuce heads grew lush and crisp without any yellowing. No more shelling out for bags of synthetic soil amendments that drain your wallet and might not even be as effective long term. Plus, there's something so satisfying about the hands-on rhythm of it all. Raking in the fresh air, pouring the mix while the sun filters through the trees, turning the pile as you chat with a friend. For me, it's the perfect weekend unwind, a quiet way to watch raw nature unfold and feel connected to the cycle of seasons. Ever catch yourself wondering why some neighbors' gardens seem to burst with life while yours is just getting by? More often than not, it boils down to the quality of the soil underneath, and dry leaves alone won't cut it without a little help to unlock their potential. This method targets that exact issue by accelerating the breakdown of lignin, the tough, woody compound in leaves that makes them so resistant. In simple terms, the sugars from the molasses feed the bacteria first. Those bacteria produce enzymes and acids that soften up the lignin, and before you know it, you've got usable compost forming at a pace you'd never expect. Don't sweat it if you're not some soil science expert. I sure wasn't when I dove in years ago. My very first attempt was a bit of a comedy of errors. I overdid the water and the pile slumped into a soggy heap that attracted a few too many flies. But I dialed it back, added more dry material, and tried again the next weekend. Now, it's become my fall ritual, as reliable as the changing leaves themselves. Let's weave in a quick story to bring this home. Meet Rose, not the bush, but my aunt who's pushing 70 and makes the most of her condo life with a sunny deck full of containers. Every fall, the leaves from the shared complex grounds would pile up near her spot, and she dreaded the cleanup, especially with her bad knees. I swung by one weekend and walked her through the basics. We gathered a bunch in an old galvanized tub she had lying around, whipped up the molasses water using a jar from her baking supplies, and poured it on carefully. Just 3 days later, she rang me up, her voice bubbling with surprise. The pile was warm, starting to break down, and even drawing in a few ants and beetles that she said looked like tiny workers. These days, she uses the resulting compost to feed her deck-side geraniums and herbs, and they're blooming so vibrantly that the building manager stopped by to ask for her secrets. Tales like Aunt Rose's are what fuel my passion for sharing on Bloomcraft. They remind me how accessible real gardening wins can be, no matter your setup. Expanding on those personal touches, you might want to play around with a few variations to suit your local conditions or what you have on hand, keeping the core pour as the anchor. If you've got used coffee grounds from your morning brew, sprinkle a handful into the layers for an added nitrogen hit that amps up the microbial party. Or toss in some crushed eggshells from breakfast for a calcium boost that benefits future plantings like tomatoes or peppers. But remember to keep it straightforward at first. The molasses pour is what drives the quick results, so don't overcomplicate. In hotter, drier climates, the pile might heat up rapidly, so check the moisture daily to prevent it from drying out again. For those in wetter regions with frequent rains, drape a breathable tarp over the top during downpours to shield it from getting waterlogged while still allowing some air and rain to filter through. I had to tweak things for my own shady backyard under those tall pines. The cooler, dimmer spot meant it took an extra day or two to really get going, but once it did, the compost was just as rich and effective. Think about the bigger picture here. The chain reaction that starts with a simple pour and echoes through your whole outdoor world. Your homemade compost nourishes the plants. Those plants, in turn, purify the air around your home and provide habitat for birds and pollinators, and suddenly you're woven into this larger natural cycle that feels restorative. It's incredibly empowering to realize you can create fertility from what others see as waste. Lucas from the community garden took it even further by organizing free workshops for locals. He has everyone bring their own leaves in bins, demos the molasses pour step by step under the autumn sun, and sends them home with a starter pile to tend. One participant, a young mom new to gardening, later emailed him saying it brought her patchy lawn back to life after years of neglect, with grass filling in thick and green. Those kinds of personal victories, they're the heartbeat of why techniques like this spread and stick. Diving a touch deeper into the few days timeline, let's set realistic expectations based on what I've observed over multiple seasons. Visible changes often kick in around days 3 to 7, hinging on the weather and your pile size. If it's a balmy fall with consistent moisture, you might see action by day 3. Cooler or windier conditions could push it to a week. I like to keep tabs on mine using a long stem compost thermometer if I have one around. Aim for that sweet spot of 100 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit in the center, which signals the microbes are thriving. If it climbs too high, give it a thorough turn to cool it down and prevent any beneficial organisms from getting zapped. If it's lingering too low, refresh with a bit more of the mix to rev things up. It's a lot like tending a small campfire, nurturing the warmth for the soil's sake rather than flames. For anyone just starting out, I can't stress enough how forgiving this is. Begin with a modest 2-foot-high pile and a single gallon of the solution to keep it low pressure. Observe how it responds in your unique spot, make notes on what works, and tweak as you go. Daisy's balcony experiment is a perfect example of scaling it down without losing the magic. She even started snapping photos of the daily progress, from the initial dry stack on day 1 to the lively, earthy crumble by day 5, and shares them with her online gardening group for encouragement. It's those small, trackable wins that build confidence and turn one-time tries into habits. As your compost continues to develop over those initial days and beyond, think strategically about how to put it to work for maximum impact. Work it gently into the top few inches of your flower beds to support perennials like those endless blooming roses, where it improves drainage and feeds the roots steadily. For lawns that need a refresh, a light top dressing in thin layers can encourage thicker, greener turf without overwhelming the grass. Or blend it into your homemade potting mix for starting seeds. My basil and cilantro seedlings take off like rockets in it, developing strong stems early on. Oliver, my experimenting neighbor, reserves batches for the base of his fruit trees. He swears the peaches from his dwarf variety taste juicier and more flavorful than ever, thanks to the steady nutrient release that keeps the trees happy through dry spells. Of course, every method has its little hurdles, and being prepared keeps you ahead. If you're dealing with waxy leaves from trees like magnolia or eucalyptus, give them a rough chop with shears before piling to expose more surface area for the microbes. Come winter, when things freeze solid, this hot start technique naturally pauses. Best to stockpile your treated leaves under cover and resume in spring when warmth returns. But during prime fall months, this is your golden window, aligning perfectly with nature's rhythm. Tying it all back to sustainability, embracing this approach does so much more than tidy your yard. It actively fights waste by diverting leaves from landfills where they'd decompose inefficiently and release harmful gases. Your efforts help build healthier soil that acts as a carbon sink, pulling CO2 from the air and storing it long term. It just feels right, doesn't it? Contributing to a greener world, one pile at a time. One more heartfelt example to round things out. Ivy's indoor adaptation not only saved her budget on store-bought soil, but also revived a peace lily that was on its last legs, its leaves drooping despite regular watering. After the few-day treatment on some collected autumn leaves, she mixed in the result, and now it's pushing out new shoots weekly, adding that fresh greenery to her living room. These simple shifts lead to such profound changes, proving anyone can nurture life from the everyday. So keep that curiosity alive and experiment freely. Maybe toss in some comfrey leaves from your herb garden for their natural potassium, or a scoop of worm castings to turbocharge the breakdown. But always circle back to the essentials: the pour, the wait, the occasional turn. In the end, this hack transforms what could be a dreaded chore into pure joy, turning dry leaves into living compost that your garden will thrive on. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on Bloomcraft. Give it a whirl this season and drop your experiences below. I'm here cheering you on. Would you like me to add more specific examples or focus on a particular aspect of the composting process?